The rain had started just minutes before the ceremony, a heavy, relentless downpour that turned the air thick with humidity and the stone floor of Essie.
Mariès épiscopale slick Bénéate Émilie Carterès Ivoriel.
Her wedding dress, an heirloom passed down from her grandmother, clung to her like a second skin. The delicate lace and satin were beautiful in photographs, but now felt more like a shroud. She stood at the altar, staring ahead, but her mind was already far away. Preston Hale, her soon-to-be husband, recited his vows with clinical precision. His voice was calm, unwavering, and devoid of any warmth. He didn't even look at her when he spoke. Emily's hand trembled in his grip, her fingers stiff beneath the weight of the diamond engagement ring he'd chosen without her input. She had agreed to this wedding because she believed it was her only way out of debt, out of hopelessness, out of a life shrinking by the day since her grandmother passed away and left her with medical bills stacked to the ceiling. It wasn't love. It was survival. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. The pews were filled not with friends and family but with Preston's business associates, men in sleek suits with predatory eyes, more interested in the merger this marriage represented than the woman in the white dress. She felt like a lamb being paraded before wolves, a pawn in a transaction she didn't fully understand. Then she heard it. A whisper. Just beneath the swell of the organ. She shouldn't have heard it. Preston had leaned slightly toward his best man, thinking the music masked his voice. But the words pierced through the fog of Emily's thoughts and lodged deep in her spine. Once the paperwork's finalized during the honeymoon, the transfer goes through. She has no idea what she's signing. Her name gives us full access. Emily's heart stopped. Her body went cold. Transfer? Contracts? What was she signing away? Her vision narrowed. The priest's voice faded. Her breath came in shallow, panicked gasps. She glanced at Preston, who turned toward her with a practiced smile, the kind he wore during investor briefings and press interviews. But now she saw something else in his eyes, cold ambition. No love. No kindness.
Juste calculation. The priestess voice rose.
If anyone can show just cause why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace. A pause. A heartbeat. Emily's entire body clenched. She felt Preston's grip tighten, subtle, possessive, final. I object. The words were a whisper, barely audible. Preston's jaw flexed.
Émilie, don't be dramatique.
She looked him in the eyes. I object, she repeated, louder. Gasps rippled through the church.
I can't do this. I won't do this.
She tore her hand from his and stepped back, the train of her dress catching under her heels.
The organ musique faltered.
The guests turned like synchronized predators, their eyes scanning for disruption, for weakness, for blood. Preston's voice dropped to a hiss. You're making a mistake. You think walking away erases your debt? You think you can just run? I know what you're doing, Emily said, her voice stronger than she expected.
You never cared about me.
You only needed my name. Then she turned and ran.
Out of the sanctuary.
Down the steps of the church.
Into the storm.
Her dress, soaked within seconds, dragged behind her like an anchor. Her makeup smeared, her veil tangled in her hair, she looked more like a ghost than a bride. The night swallowed her whole. Her purse, her phone, her life, everything was still inside the church. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't stop.
Across the street, headlight cut through the rain.
A black SUV idled beneath the overhang of a luxury hotel. Its engine was on. She could see the glow of a cigarette, the silhouette of a man in the driver's seat.
Desperation made her reckless.
She yanked open the back door and dove in, gasping. Drive, she said breathlessly. Please. Just go. The man didn't turn immediately. He took a slow drag from his cigarette, exhaled smoke, then glanced into the rearview mirror. Dark hair.
Sharp cheekbone. Eyes like a thunderstorm about to break.
This isn't a cab, he said, voice rough, low, edged in something dangerous. I don't care.
I'll pay you whatever you want.
Just get me away from here. He studied her for a long second. Then, without a word, he put the car in gear. The SUV peeled away from the curb and into the winding streets of Summit Bay, the rain sheeting against the windows, hiding them from the city that had just swallowed her whole. They drove in silence for blocks. Finally, His voice cut through the quiet.
So, runaway bride. Want to tell me who you're running from?
Emily met his eyes in the mirror. He didn't look amused. He looked curious.
En dangereux.
My wedding, she said simply. I gathered that, he replied dryly. The dress is a dead giveaway. Emily swallowed hard. His name is Preston Hale. He's a businessman. But the wedding wasn't about love. It was about power. He was using me.
You overheard something. Something bad.
The man's expression didn't change, but something in his gaze sharpened. Preston Hale, he repeated. Interesting. You know him? I know of him, the man said. Everyone in this city with real money does. Emily hesitated. Who are you? A pause. Then he said, Damien Blake. Her breath caught. That name. She knew it. Everyone did.
Damien Blake. Billionaire. CEO.
Reputed to have taken over his father's criminal empire and turned it legitimate, or at least, that's what the press said. But the whispers told a different story. And now she was in his car. Alone. Should I be worried? She asked softly.
Damien gaz locked with her in the mirror.
That depends, he said.
Are you here because you're afraid of Preston Hale? Or because you want something more dangerous?
Emily didn't answer. She didn't know yet. But as the rain pounded against the windshield and the city blurred past, she knew one thing for certain. She wasn't turning back. Not now. Not ever.
The city rolled by like a forgotten dream. Still and glass, shimmering and indifferent in the rain.
Emily sat silently in the back seat, the wedding dress clinging to her like regret. Her breath was still shallow, her hands clenched in her lap, but her heart was slowing. The initial wave of panic had passed. Now, all that remained was a creeping uncertainty about what came next. Damien Blake hadn't spoken since revealing his name. He didn't need to. His reputation spoke for him, infamous son of Michael Blake, the man once accused of building a criminal empire so vast and insidious that it reached into every corner of Summit Bay's politics, construction, shipping, and law enforcement. Michael Blake had died under mysterious circumstances a few years back. Since then, Damien had taken over the company, Blake Holdings, and transformed it into a glittering legitimate powerhouse. Or so the headlines claimed. But Emily, like many others, knew better than to believe everything in the news. She studied him through the reflection in the mirror. He looked calm, too calm, the kind of calm that only came from a lifetime of managing danger. His face was all hard lines and angles, but there was an intellect behind his eyes that unsettled her more than his name. He wasn't just dangerous. He was calculating. Where are we going? She asked, her voice thin. My place, Damien replied without glancing back. You need to get out of that dress and clean up. You look like a ghost that wandered out of someone's past. Emily opened her mouth to argue, then realized she had no other options. Her phone, her ID, even her apartment keys were still at the church. She had nothing. Not even a plan.
Fine, she murmured.
The SUV took a sharp turn into an underground parking garage beneath a high-rise on the edge of downtown. The security gate opened without question, the guards at the entrance barely glancing at the tinted windows before waving them through. Damien parked in a private space near an elevator and turned off the engine. Wait here, he said, getting out. Seconds later, he opened the back door on her side and held out a dark overcoat. Emily hesitated, then took it, wrapping it around her shoulders. It was warm, soft, and smelled faintly of expensive cologne and something else, something darker. Control. Power. He led her through a private elevator into a penthouse that looked like something out of a modern architecture magazine.
Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the storm outside.
The interior was minimalist but luxurious, steel, leather, and cold elegance. Emily stood dripping on the marble floor, unsure of where to go or what to say. Damien walked into the kitchen, opened a cabinet, and pulled out a bottle of whiskey. He poured 2 glasses and handed one to her. She took it with a trembling hand. You have questions, he said. Emily took a sip. It burned, but the warmth helped. Why did you help me? She asked. He shrugged. Maybe I was curious. Maybe I enjoy pissing off Preston Hale. Or maybe, he said, voice lowering, I saw someone who finally chose to run. She frowned. You know him? Not personally. But his father and mine ran in similar circles back in the day. The Hales dress their empire in charity and respectability, but they're not clean. Not even close. Emily sank onto the edge of a sleek black couch, her bare feet cold against the marble. I heard him say something during the ceremony, she said slowly. About a transfer. Contracts.
Offshore account.
He said I'd never find out what I was really signing. Damien nodded, swirling his drink. Makes sense. The Hales have been using shell companies to hide assets for years. Your name would have given him access to some key holdings, ones your family didn't even know you were tied to. She blinked. My family. He sat across from her. Your father.
Daniel Carter.
He was a construction engineer. Did you know he worked on a number of black site projects funded through city contracts? Underground facilities. Reinforced vaults. Safe houses. Emily's blood turned to ice. He died in a car crash. Damien's eyes didn't flinch. Yes. But it wasn't just a crash. He was starting to ask questions. The kind that make powerful people nervous. Emily's heart pounded.
How do you know all this?
He finished his drink in one swallow and leaned forward. Because I've spent the last 5 years dismantling my father's old network. And Daniel Carter was one of the few people in that system who was clean. Too clean. He started documenting things. Quietly. He was trying to protect you and your mother. She stared at him. Why are you telling me this? Because Preston Hale marrying you isn't just about revenge. It's about access. Your father hid something before he died. Something the Hales need to find. And they believe you either have it, or know where it is. Emily stood abruptly, the coat slipping from her shoulders. This is insane, she whispered. I'm a teacher. I live in a studio apartment and eat cereal for dinner. I don't know anything about any of this.
Damien stood tout, tauring over her.
Maybe. Or maybe you just forgot. Or maybe your father was smarter than any of us gave him credit for. She stepped back. You're saying my dad was murdered. That Preston is using me. That I'm part of some conspiracy I didn't ask for. And you, what are you, Damien? Are you just a helpful stranger? Or do you have your own reasons for getting involved? He held her gaze for a long moment, then walked past her toward the window. I spent most of my life following orders I didn't believe in, he said quietly. When my father died, I had a choice, bury the truth or reshape the empire. I chose the latter. But that doesn't make me a good man. Emily turned away, overwhelmed. She needed space. She needed time to think. But mostly, she needed to understand what kind of war she had just stepped into.
Damien's voice came again, softer this time. If you stay here, he can protect you.
But only if you're willing to hear the truth. All of it. She didn't respond. Not yet. The storm raged on outside, battering the glass with a fury that mirrored the chaos inside her chest. Emily Carter had run from her wedding. But maybe she had run into something far more dangerous. And maybe, for the first time in her life, that danger was the only thing that could lead her to the truth.
The morning light crept through the blind like hésitant fingé, painting strip across the penthouse floor.
Emily hadn't slept. She sat curled on the couch in Damien's oversized sweatshirt, her mind looping through everything he'd told her the night before. About her father. About Preston. About the kind of world she had unknowingly married into. The city outside felt foreign now, a glittering machine built on secrets and blood. Damien emerged from his office, phone pressed to his ear. He was barefoot, wearing dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Even in exhaustion, he carried himself like a man born into command. He ended the call with a clipped handlet, and set the phone on the counter. You haven't moved since last night, he said. I've been thinking, she murmured. That's usually dangerous. She looked up at him, eyes shadowed. You said my father was documenting something. What if he hid it? What if that's why Preston wanted to marry me? Damien studied her face, then nodded slightly. It's possible. Daniel Carter worked on projects tied to multiple shell corporations. If he found evidence, he would have kept it off-grid.
Somewhere personnel.
My grandmother's house, Emily said suddenly. He spent weeks there before the crash. My grandmother said he locked something in the attic but never told anyone what it was. Damien considered. Then that's where we start. Before they could leave, his phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened. What is it? Emily asked. Connor Maddox, he said grimly.
Preston's business partner. Et knows you're with me.
How? Someone talked. He picked up his jacket, moving fast. We need to leave. Now. They took the private elevator down to the garage, but before they reached the car, the security lights flickered. Damien drew a gun from his holster in one smooth motion and pulled Emily behind him. The next second, the glass door to the stairwell shattered inward. Two men in dark coats stormed in, guns drawn.
Damien fired first.
One man dropped instantly. The other ducked behind a pillar and returned fire, bullets sparking against concrete. Emily pressed herself against the wall, heart pounding. Stay down.
Damien barqued.
The firefight lasted less than 30 seconds. When the smoke cleared, both attackers were down.
Damien grabait Emilies Rist.
They were professionals.
Maddox's men.
That means Preston's getting desperate. He drove them out of the city, weaving through traffic with surgical precision. Emily sat silent, clutching the seatbelt, adrenaline still roaring in her veins. Finally, when the skyline disappeared behind them, she whispered, "Is this normal for you?" Damien's mouth twitched. Normal is a luxury I stopped having years ago. They reached her grandmother's house, a small weathered cottage on the outskirts of a quiet town 2 hours north of Summit Bay. The garden was overgrown, the paint peeling, but the place smelled faintly of lavender and old wood. It felt like safety, at least for a moment. Inside, everything was as she remembered. Her grandmother's sewing machine by the window. The faded photographs on the mantel. And above it, the attic hatch. Damien climbed up first, flashlight in hand. Stay here. I'm coming with you, Emily said, grabbing another flashlight.
In the attic, dust swirled in the light beam.
Old furniture, boxes, and canvases were stacked haphazardly. Emily moved toward a trunk marked with her father's initials. Inside were blueprints, documents, and a single flash drive sealed in a plastic bag. Her hands trembled. This is it. Before Damien could respond, Emily's phone, one of his spare burners, vibrated on the floorboards.
The calais idée rid Lily Jameson. Her best friend. Emily snatched it up.
Lily? Are you okay?
A strangled voice came through.
Help me, they found me. Please. The line went dead. Emily froze. They have her. Damien took the phone, his jaw tightening.
Maddox must ve taken her to Bayou.
I have to go, she said. No, he snapped. That's exactly what they want.
You go, you die.
I can't just sit here.
Damien exhaled, eyes narrowing.
We do this my way.
You want your franc back?
Fine. But you follow my lead. They tracked the call to the industrial district on the riverfront, a row of abandoned warehouses that looked like skeletons of the old city. Damien parked in the shadows and handed Emily a small earpiece. Stay in the car.
What verra-pan, don't move until he say.
She nodded, though every nerve in her body screamed to run after him.
Through the windshield, she watched him disappear into the warehouse, a silent shadow moving through the dark.
Minutes crawled by. Then, gunfire. Shouts.
The sound of shattering glass.
Emily's fear snapped. She opened the door and ran. Inside, the air stank of oil and metal. Her footsteps echoed on the concrete. She found Lily tied to a chair in the corner, gagged, her face bruised but alive. Emily rushed to her, tearing at the ropes.
Lily, it's okay, I will got you.
Emily, no. Lily gasped as the gag fell. It's a trap. A man stepped from the shadows behind her, gun raised.
Connor Maddox.
Well, he drawled. The runaway bride herself. Emily turned slowly. He was tall, immaculately dressed, with the easy arrogance of a man who believed he was untouchable. His smile was reptilian. You've caused quite the mess.
Preston's furious. You ruined a $10 million wedding.
Let her go, Emily said, stepping in front of Lily. You're not in a position to negotiate. He cocked the gun. You have something I want.
The drive your fater achide. En dit au vert, en meb your franc walks out.
I don't have it. That's unfortunate. A gunshot echoed, followed by another. Maddox staggered backward, clutching his arm. Damien appeared behind him, gun still smoking. In seconds, the room erupted into chaos. Maddox's men swarmed from the upper catwalks.
Damien pulled Emily behind a crat, returning fire with brutal precision.
Lily screamed as bullets ricocheted off steel beams. Emily's hands shook, but she grabbed Lily and crawled toward the exit. Damien covered them, taking out 2 men before the rest fled into the night, dragging Maddox with them. When silence finally fell, the only sound was the rain dripping through the broken roof. Lily clung to Emily, sobbing. They said Preston would forgive me if I told them where you were, she whispered. I didn't know what they'd do. Emily felt the betrayal like a knife, but she pulled her friend closer.
You're safe now.
Damien approached, blood streaking his sleeve, his expression grim. We need to go. This isn't over. Back at the car, Emily turned to him. You knew, didn't you? About my father, about Preston, about all of this.
You've known from the start.
He didn't deny it.
Ik knew pies.
But I didn't know how deep it went. Then why help me? Because I owe your father, he said quietly.
Et on savait de my life.
Emily stared at him, stunned. And you didn't think to tell me that? Would it have made a difference? She wanted to scream at him, to demand answers, but exhaustion dulled everything. She looked out the window as they drove into the night. Her friend was safe, but her world was burning. Her father's death wasn't an accident. Her best friend had betrayed her. And Damien Blake, the man who had saved her life, was tangled in the same darkness that had destroyed it. The truth she'd been chasing was finally within reach. And it was burning everything it touched. The Hale Foundation Gala was the most anticipated event of the year in Summit Bay, a glittering evening where politicians, celebrities, and business tycoons mingled beneath chandeliers worth more than the average home. The venue was the Grand Riverton Hotel, its marble halls and gold accents scrubbed to perfection for the occasion. The press lined the entrance, cameras flashing as guests arrived in gowns and tuxedos, champagne already flowing inside. And Emily Carter was about to set the place on fire. She stood across the street, cloaked in Damien's tailored black coat, her hair pinned into an elegant twist, face composed despite the war raging behind her eyes. The flash drive her father had hidden was tucked into her clutch, its contents now decrypted and damning, proof of money laundering, bribery, blackmail, and systematic corruption involving the Hale family and several high-ranking officials. It was all there. And she was going to show it to the world. Damien had offered to do it for her. To stand before the cameras and make the statement himself. But Emily had refused. This was her family's legacy. Her father had died trying to reveal the truth. She wouldn't hide behind anyone, not even Damien. Now, as the doors of the hotel glowed in the city's golden light, she crossed the street and entered the Lion's Den. Inside, the atmosphere was intoxicating. A string quartet played softly near the grand staircase. Waiters weaved through the crowd with silver trays. Laughter drifted on the air like perfume. It was a facade of wealth and power, untouched by consequence. Emily moved with purpose, weaving through the crowd toward the stage set for the evening's keynote address. Behind it, a projector screen displayed photos of children in hospital beds, the supposed beneficiaries of the night's charitable donations. It was the perfect stage. She reached the edge of the room and found Lily waiting, her face pale but determined. After the warehouse ambush, Lily had insisted on helping, her guilt chiseled into every word she spoke. You don't have to do this alone, she whispered. I'm not, Emily replied. Damien was nearby, watching, waiting. The event's MC took the stage, tapping the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at the Hale Foundation's annual gala. Tonight, we celebrate the spirit of generosity and progress. Emily tuned out the speech. Her fingers closed around the flash drive in her bag. Her legs moved before she could second-guess herself. She stepped onto the stage. The crowd murmured in confusion as she crossed to the microphone. The MC stumbled over his words. A spotlight swung toward her, and in that blinding moment, Every pair of eyes in the room locked onto Emily Carter, the runaway bride, now standing at the center of power, wearing defiance like a crown. "My name is Emily Carter," she said, her voice steady. "And I have something to say." Gasps. Whispers. Someone dropped a glass. "I was supposed to marry Preston Hale," she continued. "But that wedding was never about love. It was a cover for something far more sinister. The Hale family has spent years building a facade of philanthropy, but behind the scenes, they've used their foundation to launder money, cover up crimes, and silence anyone who got too close to the truth, including my father, Daniel Carter." More gasps. Then silence. She raised the flash drive. "This contains evidence, contracts, offshore transfers, recordings, proof of what they've done. And I'm giving it to the press, the FBI, and every news outlet that still believes in the truth." A commotion rippled near the back of the room. A figure moved through the crowd, Preston Hale, his jaw tight, face flushed with fury. He climbed the stage steps, pushing past security, eyes locked on Emily. "You've lost your mind," he hissed. "You used me," she shot back. "You used my family. You murdered my father." Preston's hand went to his jacket.
Emiliès briscoqued.
Damien was already moving. But not fast enough.
Preston drew a gun, résignit with cold precision.
The room exploded into screams. Time slowed. Emily froze, staring down the barrel of the weapon, her heart hammering in her chest.
Then a shot rang out.
But it wasn't from Preston. It came from the balcony above.
Preston staggered, clutching his shoulder, the gun clattering to the floor.
Damien stood at the edge of the crowd, his weapon still raised, smoke curling from the barrel. Security tackled Preston to the ground as chaos erupted, guests fleeing, cameras flashing, someone calling for paramedics. Emily stood trembling, the flash drive still clutched in her hand. Damien reached her side, eyes scanning for more threats. "Are you hit?" She shook her head. "Then we need to move." Police swarmed the building within minutes. Preston was arrested on multiple charges. Lily handed the flash drive to a federal agent, ensuring the evidence would be secured. Reporters shouted questions. Flashbulbs exploded. Emily and Damien slipped away through a service exit, their steps echoing in the quiet corridor behind the glittering chaos. Outside, in the cool night air, Emily leaned against a wall, finally letting the adrenaline drain from her body. "I can't believe it's over," she whispered. Damien looked at her, a shadow crossing his face. "It's not." She met his gaze. "What do you mean?" "They have the evidence, yes."
Preston is going down.
"But there are others, people in the shadows who won't go down without a fight. The moment that flash drive goes public, you become a threat." "I already was," she said quietly. "The moment I walked away from that altar." He nodded. "The FBI will offer you protection. A new identity.
A way out."
Emily's brow furrowed. "And you?" Damien looked away.
"Y'ave my own démon to face."
"My past won't just disappear because I helped you." Then his voice softened. "There's something else. They want me to." She stilled. "Why?" "The files include my name. Deals I signed when I was still under my father's thumb. They don't care that I've changed. To them, I'm still part of the system." "Are you going to turn yourself in?" "If I do, they'll bury me." He reached into his coat and pulled out a second envelope, a new identity, documents, plane tickets. "They offered you a choice," he said. "I'm offering you another. Come with me. We disappear. Together. Or you stay, and you try to build something from the ashes." Emily stared at him, the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders.
"You're asking me to leave everything behind."
"I'm not asking," he said. "I'm giving you the freedom to choose." She looked back at the hotel, at the flashing lights, the rising sirens, the eyes of a city finally forced to look at its own corruption. Then she looked at Damien, the man who had saved her life, the man who had once been part of everything she hated, the man who had risked everything to help her uncover the truth. "I need time," she said. He nodded. "Take it. But not too long. They'll come after me soon." They stood in silence for a long moment, the night folding around them like a curtain. Emily Carter had started this journey as a pawn. Now, she held the power. But power always came with a price. And the final choice had yet to be made. 3 months later, the world moved on. Summit Bay was still standing, but its foundations had cracked. The Hale empire had collapsed under the weight of the evidence Emily had delivered. Preston Hale faced multiple federal charges and remained in custody without bail. Several public officials had been suspended pending investigation. News anchors debated the fallout nightly, dissecting each revelation like it was a television drama. But Emily Carter had vanished from the spotlight. The Emily who once stood on a wedding altar in a borrowed dress was gone. In her place was a woman who had learned that the truth could cost more than silence, and still chose to speak it. Now she stood barefoot in the garden of a coastal cottage nestled along the Oregon cliffs, sea wind lifting the hem of her linen skirt. The scent of salt, rosemary, and wildflowers wrapped around her like a quiet kind of healing. The cottage overlooked the water, with wide windows and a porch wrapped in ivy. It had belonged to an old friend of Damien's, one of the few people he still trusted. They hadn't spoken much after the night of the gala. He'd given her time, as promised. She had spent that time alone, sorting through her grief, her guilt, and the sharp-edged remains of everything she once believed. She had stayed away from the headlines, from the agents who wanted to debrief her further, from the reporters who offered money for her story. Instead, she planted wildflowers in rocky soil and waited to feel like herself again. But the truth was, she wasn't the same. And she didn't want to be. She heard the sound of tires crunching over gravel and turned. Damien stepped out of a rented Jeep, wearing jeans and a black sweater, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. He looked thinner, tired. The kind of tired that came from running, not from lack of sleep. But his eyes still held the same quiet storm they always had. "You found me," she said. He gave a faint smile. "You didn't exactly make it hard." Emily folded her arms. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see you." They stood in silence for a moment, the breeze rustling through the lavender bushes between them. She broke it first. "I thought you were going to leave the country." "I was," he said. "But I couldn't. Not yet." "Why?" He dropped the duffel by the porch steps. "Because I didn't want to disappear without knowing your answer." Émilie blinked. "To what?" Damien stepped closer. He pulled something small from his pocket and held it out to her, a ring, simple and elegant, set with a sapphire instead of a diamond. "Non pire. No lies. No leverage. Just a life. A real one. With you." Her breath caught. "You're asking me to run again." "I'm asking you to choose." She took the ring, holding it in her palm, feeling its weight. "I don't want to run," she said. "Not anymore. But I also don't want to pretend the past didn't happen." "Neither do I." He stepped closer. "We can't change where we came from. But we can decide where we go next." She looked up at him, eyes searching. "You've killed people," she said. "You've signed contracts that hurt families. You've helped build a world I spent my whole life trying to escape." His jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. "And you exposed that world," he said. "You brought it to its knees. You have something I never had, conviction. I don't want to take that from you. I want to stand beside it." She closed her fingers around the ring. "This isn't forgiveness," she said softly. "I'm not asking for it." They stood there, face to face, not as a savior and the saved, not as fugitives or lovers caught in the storm, but as two broken people trying to build something whole. Later that afternoon, they walked down to the cliffs together. The wind was strongé d'air, the horizon vaste and endless. Emily sat with her sketchbook, drawing lines that turned into wings, into symbols, into a kind of peace. Damien watched her from a distance, letting her be. He no longer tried to control what he couldn't hold. That, perhaps, was the biggest change in him. When she finally looked up, she said, "There's something I want to show you." She led him to the edge of the bluff, where a narrow path wound down to a small cove hidden beneath the cliffs. There, tucked between rocks, was a bench she had built with her own hands. On it, carved into the wood, were the words, "From ashes, will de flower." Damien ran his fingers across the carving. "It's from something my dad used to say," Emily said. "He always believed the worst parts of our lives could still grow something beautiful." He looked at her. "You think that's possible?" "After everything." I don't know, she said. But I want to find out. They sat on the bench together as the sun dipped low over the ocean, painting the waves in gold. No promises.
No certainty.
Just the quiet knowledge that whatever came next, they would face it not as shadows of their pasts, but as authors of their future. Back at the cottage, the phone rang that night. Emily answered, listened, and said very little. When she hung up, Damien looked at her. Who was it? An agent, she said. The trial's set. They want me to testify. He nodded once. Will you? She hesitated, then said, yes. Damien didn't argue. He only said, I'll be there. Whatever they try, I won't let them take you down for doing the right thing. Emily stepped closer, resting her forehead against his. This isn't the end, is it? No, he said.
It's the beginning.
And maybe that was what they had always been chasing, not justice, not revenge, not even redemption, but a beginning that was finally theirs. Not perfect, but honest.
A life built from the ruin, blooming in a place no one thought anything could grow. Just like wildflower.